Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife and sharing some fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. My guest today is Nadine Kelly, and Nadine is a former medical doctor who decided to do something completely different. She's going to tell us all about it today, but she is Yogi M.D. She's a yoga teacher, and she's also a podcast host, and I'm delighted to welcome you here today, Nadine. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Rachel.
It's lovely to have you here, and I know that you and I have all sorts of ideas in common, and we share lots of thoughts, don't we? And it's always lovely to find a kindred spirit on the internet, which is where I meet so many fabulous women. But I'm going to kick off. So you were a qualified medical doctor for many years. So why did you take the decision to stop doing that?
That is a very loaded question. I'll try to give you the simplest answer. Well, it was something that I had always wanted to do. It was one of those things where you don't really necessarily know why, but it's a childhood dream for as long as I could remember. And when something that you can only imagine turns into reality, the picture doesn't necessarily match.
Yeah.
It did at first. And I guess that's because that was my expectation. And what I mean by that is I expected it to be very difficult because so many years of study, so much sacrifice, so much putting things off in order to become the best doctor I could really took a lot of hard work. And with all of that hard work, I expected it to be painful. I did. But I expected there to be some sort of relief at a certain point, an arrival, if you will. I didn't expect perfection. I wasn't naive, but I did expect to earn my place in this world of practicing medicine, and then just to be okay being there. I thought that would be enough. What I did not anticipate was that I had been participating in this mindset that the pain would end when I got to the next thing. So it was always at the bottom of the totem pole in a specific area of training. And then once that was completed, it was, I'm on the bottom of the totem pole again. So it was, in other words, so medical school first. Then it was residency. Then it was fellowship. Then it was becoming an attending. And it was always a feeling of starting over. But then when I became this attending and I'm practicing amongst people who are, maybe not quite my peers because they were older than I was and they had so much more experience. But I figured after a certain number of years that I would have earned my place amongst these people and that they would know my character and my desire to be a team player and to really make an impact in a beneficial fashion in patients' lives. And then it would be okay. I wouldn't have to prove myself anymore. It didn't turn out that way. And it also out of control of maybe the individual interactions. Medicine itself was becoming more of a business. And that is not how I grew up. One of the things you mentioned when you started my lovely introduction today was that we have so many things in common. And one of the things I think you and I really share in common is this respect for the aging process, this respect for our elders. I grew up that way. And when I was coming up in medicine, in medical school, and even sometimes in college and different aspects of my training, there were always those influential people who were older, who provided me this sense of grounding. They provided this great example of what being a doctor could really be. And so I had those people in my life, and the way they worked and they also represented not just wisdom and intelligence, but integrity and passion for their craft and patience to develop that craft. They were practicing medicine. It was about helping the patient. And then when I stepped into becoming an attending, it was like that at first, but then medicine became more of a business, as I just said, and it started to become about the numbers. How fast, how many, and I just couldn't see myself. I was only 40 at the time when I decided to step out of medicine. I couldn't see myself practicing medicine in that way for the next 20, 30 years left. It was becoming too difficult for me to deny that I was extremely uncomfortable with the direction that medicine was taking. It didn't feel like it matched why I entered anymore. And so because I was trying so hard to deny it, because it did take me so long to become a doctor, it started to take physical and mental tolls on my well-being. And that's when it came to a head and it was time to step away.
I think that's so interesting because I think perhaps it came a little bit early for you, but in midlife, we get often to the stage where we don't want to compromise anymore, do we? We don't want to go along with an environment that just doesn't suit us. I was exactly the same. I stepped away from working in the city because it wasn't in line with my values. It just didn't fit anymore. And before I could kind of go along with it, although there was a nagging feeling that wasn't really what I should be doing. But I think it's also such a shame because for the most part, I mean, we have private medicine here in the UK, but we have the NHS. It probably would have been a very different scenario for you as a doctor within the NHS rather than the American medical system.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's all sorts of opportunities to say, well, what if? But having this lens now, looking at all of this from this distance, now this was 8 years ago, I can definitely say that things happened the way they were supposed to happen. And it opened up my life so much more to leave medicine. My life became richer. And before, there were moments where I felt like guilt and like I had to force interest and passion. And maybe it was because it was weighing so much on me physically and mentally. You know, I did become depressed at that point when it was time to leave medicine. Leaving medicine definitely, while it was very devastating because I thought it was something that I was supposed to do, and I felt guilty for not wanting to continue doing it, that now in retrospect, the life that I've built for myself, the people I've been able to meet, the lives that I've been able to impact in what is a meaningful way to me, I wouldn't trade any of that. I had to go through all of that to discover this. And I had to learn that I am not the kind of person who is going to do well without real belief and real passion and real dedication. And when I say that, before, when it was time, when I was practicing medicine, in order to keep up with changing literature and all that, you always had to be studying, lifelong learner. I did believe in that. I did, but it was forced. Oh, okay, it's time to set aside 2 hours now to make myself read these journals. It's not that I didn't find things interesting, curious, but I wasn't excited about it. Now, with teaching the yoga to my senior population, I can't get enough of trying to learn as much as I can and reading and making handouts for my students because I get excited about something, a new discovery that I've learned, or the reason why resistance training is so important, not just because, yeah, you'll get strong muscles and strong bones, but they're finding that it impacts your intellectual health, your memory as well. So when I see things like that, it just charges me to go share that with my students to help them, because I can see those impacts. I can feel them. I can touch my students. I can see what it's doing for them in their daily lives. One of the other things that really bothered me philosophically about how medicine is practiced in the US is a sickness model. It has its place, but where's the world of prevention? What I like about what I do is I'm helping educate that we don't have to succumb to certain diseases, certain chronic diseases. They're mismatched diseases, meaning that our ancestors evolved a certain way and our bodies are not prepared in this day and age to handle excess certain things. So excess sugar in our diets and etc. We're made for movement. And because our cultural evolution is not keeping up with that physical evolution, we're seeing these mismatched diseases like diabetes, like hypertension, like arthritis. And so I find my role to be in that world where I'm helping to educate. No, it's not good to be sedentary. This is why. It's not good to have excess this food or that food, and this is why. And you have a choice in how you take care of yourself and how you show up by taking care of your whole body, so that you don't have to necessarily be in the medical system as a sick person all of the time. You can manage certain, even if you do have arthritis. I'm not saying that you aren't necessarily going to get chronic diseases, but when you get them, how can you manage them to diminish the amount of medication you're taking? So this is where I see myself really thriving.
And it's fantastic because you have the medical knowledge to back that up, don't you? You have all of that.
Yeah, I earned it.
Yeah, you did. So you work specifically with older people now, don't you? Is that right, in your yoga practice?
Yes.
So why are you so passionate about yoga and seniors, and what are some of the issues that you find when you are working with seniors and doing yoga?
That's a really big question. Okay. Let me unpack that a little bit. Why do I work with seniors? Well, there was a testing phase. When I first came out of medicine, I didn't know I was going to be a yoga teacher. I was practicing yoga myself for my sanity at the time. And I walked into a yoga school in my neighborhood, or yoga studio rather, because I wanted to seek some clarity. I wanted to practice more so I could quiet my mind and I could figure out what was the next thing. They just so happened to have a teacher training program they were about to launch, and the head of the studio convinced me to do it. He said, you don't necessarily have to be a teacher. Not everybody does, but it is a way to deepen your practice and learn more about the practice of yoga and about yourself. So I said, why not? And I know what else I'm going to do right now. Anyway, 3 months into the training program, there was a woman who was helping to teach us, and she taught a class that was the gentlest, what I didn't think of as yoga class, as you could imagine. Small movements, little details. And I thought, oh my goodness, there's my light bulb. I can practice this way with a specific population who needs it to be slow and modified, and use my medical knowledge because I get it. So that led me to wanting to teach older people. I also tried my hand at a couple of things too. I'm also certified to teach kids. I did try that for a while. I admire my children's yoga teacher colleagues and my mentor. She was actually on my podcast. Love her. But that's not where my talents lie. But I needed to figure that out. But what I do is I use some of the things that I learned from her for little kids, and I apply it to big kids. Why can't we have fun sometimes in yoga as well? Why can't we take that joyful, playful attitude? So I'll do little things like that in classes, fun to make it less serious. The reason why I love an older population, I think just is part of who I am. I was raised by Haitian immigrants. I'm first generation here in America, and we respect our elders. We look at them as people who provide wisdom, who deserve respect. Um, so yeah, I always felt more comfortable with my elders than my peers, to be quite honest. I didn't think that, and I've just kind of wondered why that is. I don't have a really good explanation, just to say that I just find comfort in the presence of an elder that I don't find in my peers. My mom calls me an old soul. I think she's right. Um, so it was just natural for me to want to spend time in a classroom setting, in a slower setting, putting together also my love of when I practice pathology, which is using a microscope to diagnose disease or not. Part of what attracted me to pathology was the details, figuring things out, putting a story together from beginning to end. And so what I liked that I could do with the yoga with an older population was to take a pose and deconstruct it, figure out how to take that pose for this specific body. Does that mean staying in the chair? Does that mean standing up at a wall? Does that mean using a yoga block or a strap? Does that mean only doing the upper body component of, say, a warrior? So I liked using that investigative approach into making yoga accessible for certain bodies. And then say something can't be done on the floor. Well, you can do it in the chair. Or maybe if it can't be done in the chair, it can be done in the water. So that is what I really like about teaching yoga to my elders. All of those things. My natural love for my elders, and then wanting to slow things down and figuring them out and making them applicable to an older body. And also, I've just had it with speed. I've had it. I just have. I'm so over everything needing to be done quickly. And it's not a judgment. Look, at a certain, like for instance, I have two daughters, 21 and 19. I wouldn't expect them to find the same pleasure out of the style of yoga that I practice with my students as, say, a vinyasa class where it is flowing. One, they have young bodies and they can explore that form of yoga or that way or that pace of practicing. For them, that makes sense. Maybe that flow for a mind that's thinking a lot or distracted, that flow pulls you out of that. And so that is appropriate. But for an older woman, but for an older woman who doesn't think she can practice, who hears yoga and thinks, I have to be 25 in tight-fitting clothes with a brand name on the floor. I can't do that. It's not for me. That's not true. You can practice just in a modified environment. And so I like going slow. I appreciate going slowly. I have the patience for it. Now I want it. So those are all reasons why it's a good fit for me to be doing what I'm doing right now.
Well, one of the things I love about you and your podcast is the way you do talk slowly. And you talk in a very considered way. And I am noticing myself slowing down just talking to you. And I love that. I absolutely love it. I mean, do listeners go and check out Nadine's podcast, because you'll just fall in love with her voice and it is just so soothing. And you'll just want to listen to her, because it's just it's an instant kind of, let's just bring it down to a more relaxed level and a slower level. So it totally, your voice and the way you present yourself totally fits with what you're saying about wanting to be slower, about wanting, and I can imagine, you worked in a hospital environment. Why wouldn't you want to slow things down now, Yeah. But I think it's fantastic what you're doing as well, because I'm passionate about yoga, but I do like those fast vinyasa classes.
but then I'm on a trying to prove something to myself kick, so
That's interesting.
so I know, but so I'm trying to sort of maintain that, and I enjoy it. And I also, what you said about getting your head out of yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
that really, it works for me. So I will go to one of those classes and I will be able to clear my head, and it is a very good way of concentrating for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I can also completely understand that it is not right for a lot of people. And a lot of women will say to me, particularly women older than me, they'll sort of think, oh, yoga's really difficult, as you said, isn't it? But it doesn't have to be. And I always say, start with a really easy hatha class, or, something as you're doing, which is completely modified, which is taking all of those great elements of yoga and stretching the body out and moving it in directions that perhaps it wouldn't normally move, but just adapting it for whatever works for you. And that yoga is incredibly adaptable, isn't it?
It certainly is. And the other thing that I really like is this always surprises my students. One of the questions you asked earlier is the difficulties or the challenges maybe or what I see working with the population. There are so many myths. Obviously, we covered the one that I can't do yoga because I'm not young, flexible, etc., etc. There's also, I'm too old. I can't do anything. This is too much for me. Even this movement, I teach in an assisted living facility too. So those ladies are, one of the older ladies in there is almost 100. Okay. So there's sometimes this misperception that this will be way too much for my body to handle. So I've seen those where I have to be a cheerleader and go, no, you can still do these arm circles, but maybe you don't do 10. Or maybe you don't do them with your arms extended. Maybe you put your fingertips on your shoulders and use your elbows to draw the circles instead. So there, you can do it. You just do it for yourself. Then there's also the doubter who comes in. It's funny because she just started class with me a couple of weeks ago. We had a new session start, and she came in and said, because I always start the classes, especially if they're new people, introduce yourself. Let's go around in a circle. What are you looking to gain out of yoga? Have you practiced before? And this particular lady said, yes, I've practiced before. When I saw yoga, I thought to myself, I've been looking for a class at this time, and I got excited when I saw this. Fits into my schedule. But then she goes, but then when I came to register, I saw it was in a chair. I can get up and down on the floor, so I don't know that. We'll see if this will be enough for me. So I just smiled at her because one of the things, and I really want, I hope if nothing else, one of the things that your audience takes from this, and mine too, is something that I've really learned from some of my mentors across the board in yoga. There's no such thing as no pain, no gain. That's nonsense. No pain, no gain is nonsense. It's not just, and listen, it depends on how we talk to ourselves is how we treat ourselves. So if your thinking is no pain, no gain, and you need to beat yourself up physically all the time, then you're going to beat yourself up mentally. You're going to beat yourself up emotionally. That is going to infuse the different areas of your life. We are connected. We just are. Our thinking, the physical, emotional, social, all those things are connected. What I learned instead, though, is no strain, no gain. So after that first hour with that lady who thought, oh, it's a just chair yoga. When she was done, I walked up to her and I said, what did you think? She goes, oh, I had no idea you could do that in a chair. So my classes are not easy because we are there to work. We are there to explore what that means for each one of us. Everyone has to take responsibility for her body in class. I'm a humble guide. I give modifications and directions, but at the end of the day, are you taking yourself to your edge where you feel like you're challenged, you're a little bit uncomfortable, but are you emotionally intelligent enough to stop yourself before it becomes pain? Are you emotionally intelligent enough to know that you have to listen to, is this ego that's forcing me to do this? Or am I being mindless and looking around the room and going, well, if she can do it, I should be able to do that too? A little example of that is a student who has a shoulder issue. And I use light weights in my class because I'm a health coach too. So it's important for resistance training to be incorporated, I think, into my classes. And so everyone brings her little kit, a yoga strap, 2 blocks, a pair of light weights, hand weights, and water. And so it was time for the hand weights. And the one lady, we were doing these shoulder raises, and I noticed just grimacing the whole time. So I walked over to her while everybody is doing her thing. And I leaned over and I said, why are you using the hand weights for this particular pose or for these particular reps? How about trying to put them down? And she did. And she smiled at me. And she just did it without the resistance. And then at the end of class, she told me that the reason why she was doing it, after she thanked me, she said the reason why she was doing it is because she can't let go of perfection. It just had to be the way everybody else was doing it, as high as everybody was doing it, at the same intensity. And I just looked at her and I said, I challenge you this week, this is your homework, to ask yourself why you're hurting yourself, no matter what that is. Catch yourself this week, whether it be physically or mentally, and ask yourself, just non-judgmentally, why am I doing this to myself? What am I trying to prove? That's all.
Yeah.
So those are the types of things that I see in classes. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but we women being really hard on ourselves, having to be perfect, not feeling like we're enough, being ashamed to admit certain things, or feeling like we're alone in feeling a certain way. My class is also about community. And so we'll stop and have a little discussion because I'll hear something or see something, or I share a lot of personal stories. This happened to me today. What do you think of this? And people will chime in and feel comfortable enough to share. I used to do that to myself, or I'm still having trouble with this issue. So many examples. I just love what I do now. Love it.
That's so wonderful. And it's all about progress, isn't it? Not perfection.
There's no such thing.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no such thing.
I'd like to ask you now about your podcast. You have some wonderful guests on it. And I wanted to particularly talk about a podcast that I think I mentioned to you that I'd listened to your 2-parter with your friend. And just to explain, so the first part of this was talking with your friend about how changing diet and lifestyle had meant that her husband had been able to live many years after a very serious cancer diagnosis, when he was not expected to live that long. And then the second episode that you revisited with your friend was after he had died. And these 2 episodes had a big impact on me, because the first one was so optimistic and so positive, and the second one was in a way as well. But I loved the way that you held the space for your friend and were able to talk about such a difficult issue, and the fact that she was also willing to share her grief with you so soon after he died. And I just wanted to just hear from you really how that affected you, because it was a very brave thing to do, I think, for both you and your friend. But so yeah, just how was that?
First of all, thank you for saying that. Leslie's a very, very special person, and she's someone I really admire and I look up to and I can learn. I think you can learn something from everybody. What I've learned from her is perseverance, the desire to learn, the passion to be a lifelong learner, no matter what. Okay. She always tells me you're never too old to embark on something new. What do you have to lose? And she also has humility about her if you stop and listen, because there's this veneer of toughness. Okay. But if you really sit with her and talk, you'll see this vulnerability, and you'll hear this vulnerability and this humility. And it comes from that curiosity and desire to learn that, oh, I used to think this way, but now I realize that that no longer fits, or it doesn't fit right now in this stage of my life. And so maybe I need to reevaluate that way of thinking, the way I view myself. So the first time it was when we sat down early on in the podcast, really, because she was always so passionate about taking responsibility for her health and for her husband Eddie's health, reevaluating their lifestyles. It no longer served them. So they became people who ate much better and did a lot more cooking, and they became vegan, and they exercised more and spent time in nature together more, and discovered ways that they really enjoyed being active so that it wasn't forced. Okay. And just enjoyed really appreciating being together. This marriage, I've been married for 23 years. They were married for almost 50. Marriage goes through these stages. It's great in certain moments. It's not so great in certain moments. Anyone who tells you they don't have doubts in a marriage is a big liar. Okay, you go through these terrible stages sometimes. And with her, it was fascinating that they were able to go through good times and bad times, great patches, rough patches, and come to this moment where they're rediscovering their friendship, and it's deepening and it's changing. Encouraged me to want to spend time with her in the first podcast episode. The second one, she volunteered, to be honest. And I don't feel like I necessarily had anything to do with it, but I guess in a way I'm not giving myself credit, because she felt comfortable with me to do that. Because I doubt I'd have the strength and the courage a month or a month and a half, something like that, after a significant passing of someone who meant so much to me, to be able to talk about it, let alone on a podcast to lots of strangers. I don't know if I would have been able to bare my soul like that. She wanted to do it. I said, "Are you sure?" "Yes, I want to do it." Are you sure?" "Yes, I want to do it." I was so nervous, Rachel. It was the first time it's probably not surprising you to hear this, but I like to be prepared. Okay. So I will write questions and get the bio and the headshot and all that ahead of time. It's just what I need to do for my process. This time I said, a list of questions? Seriously? Like, I can't even approach it that way. What on earth? What can I prepare for this? I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. So lots of yoga breathing in the car on the way over to her house, because I wanted to do it in her environment. So I drove over there at her kitchen table where she felt comfortable. And I went with no questions. And I said, this is where it's really going to be about being present for that person. She needs me to be her friend right now, too. And so I'm going to provide this space for her. I'm going to get out of the way. It's not about me at all. It's about what I'm providing, but it's not about me. It's not my show. This is her platform. And so it was just an organic hour. Anyone who listens to it, you're probably impacted. It was filled with a lot of emotion. It was filled with a lot of authentic emotion. She was apologizing for stopping to cry. And I go, well, how could you not? It's okay.
Mm.
It's okay if you need to do that.
Mm.
So that's how that one went. It was terrifying, but what a gift.
What a gift.
What a gift.
Yeah. Such a gift and so powerful. And yes, do yourself credit that she was able to do that with you.
Yeah.
She's just gone quiet now. She's gone quiet. She's looking embarrassed.
It's so humbling, though, I want to make an impact in people's lives, a positive impact. That vow that I made when I started medical school of wanting to help people, it was true. It was true.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share it, and maybe leave me a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you'll find strategies, support, and resources to help make your midlife magnificent. There's a wellness program, courses, midlife mentoring to help make the most of your next chapter, and our online members club. Because life's just too short for plain biscuits. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.